Hi, Sam Houston friends. I'm so excited that you have decided to adopt my textbook and use the MindTap to go along with it. I hope that you'll find it to be a really important resource that helps your students achieve success. So I wanted to just spend a couple minutes talking with you. I'm so sorry I can't be there live in person with you, but I wanted to share a little bit about myself, why I wrote the textbook, and also talk to you a little bit about a couple of teaching strategies related to a couple of the chapters in the text. So first I'll share a little bit about my background. I have been in higher education for 16 years. I started off on the student services side of the house, working in the counseling office, primarily with the, actually half time with students with disabilities and half working with the general campus population. Then I shifted over to teaching full-time and taught the psychology and, of course, the first year seminar course. I also coordinated that course for a number of years on my campus as well. And took over as the director of our Faculty Development Center. So the two things that I really care the most about in my professional life is really helping students achieve success and also helping faculty be the best that they can be in the classroom. So you'll hopefully see that in this text with the research-based strategies that I provide for students, and also online in the instructor manual with all of the supports that I provide to you as the faculty teaching the course. So hopefully you find those to be helpful. So let me tell you a little bit about why I decided to write this text. When I shifted gears from the student services side of the house to the academic side, I was an adjunct for many years teaching this course, and probably every year or so they changed the textbook on me, and I just didn't love any of the textbooks that we were using. So when I became full-time faculty and I had more say in what textbook we were going to use, I talked with the publishers, and no one really seemed to have a textbook that was aligned to what I was doing in my course. I really had increased the academic rigor of the course. I wanted to make it a course with a lot of substance. I didn't want it to be just an extended orientation where there was guest lectures and moving around to different areas, visiting different campus resources, things of that nature. And those are important, but to me they felt more like workshops versus an actual course. So I actually, looking for some, substance for the course, before I even wrote this textbook, I started to integrate the use of peer-reviewed journal articles so that students had the opportunity to not only learn research-based strategies about what works, but also how to read and use peer-reviewed research. That was a skill that I saw was lacking in my psychology classes. Students would come into class, and when I asked them to do a presentation or a paper using high-level sources, they were actually able to find the articles, but then they weren't able to really integrate the content of the articles into their academic products. They struggled with really understanding it. And the truth is, they're complex articles. They're written for, the PhD population. So it is challenging for students, and there was no course or any place, or consistently at least, where students were able to really learn how to interact with that high-level text. So that's kind of the story behind what I did. At this point now, I want to share with you a couple of teaching strategies and approaches that I use in the course. The first one that I'll talk about is from Chapter 1. As you know, Chapter 1 is heavy on becoming a critical thinker and emphasizing the role of research in that process. So I like to dive right into how we're going to use research and how the textbook is a resource to them. So what I do is I actually take the article that's at the end of the chapter by Howard, and I really love this article because it talks about the value of the course. So I think that kind of sets the stage for the importance. And I'll walk through that article with them, kind of helping them break down the article, helping them understand, which part is the abstract, the introduction, the method, the results of discussion. And I'll often have them partner up. There's a variety of ways that I do this, but I might have them partner up and actually write in the article which part is the intro, which part is the method. And then I'll do that zooming in, the exploring the research in summary worksheet with them, where we zoom in and look at the critical questions of each section. So together as a class, and certainly in a group, this is a no stakes kind of assignment, so it's not something they're getting graded on or anything at this point. But we'll work through it. So I'll say, well, what is the research question? And I'll have, partners work together a little bit, trying to identify what they think the research question is. And then we'll talk about it as a large group. If they miss anything, I'll help them figure out what that issue was. And I often actually start with just the abstract alone. So we will do this just asking them to read that one paragraph. And then as they need more information, I help them identify which part of the article has more information. And then I tell them to go to that section to get that information. And then we come back together as a class. So the idea is getting them to use it and showing them how to do it is really critical. And then we'll talk about the results and we'll start to engage in some critical thinking. So for instance, when you take a look at that research article, they assessed 5 different areas, and what the researchers found was 4 out of the 5 actually had positive outcomes associated. If you look at the before and the after class data points, everything went up in all areas except for one. The one area is careers. So then I will pause and I'll say, okay, so why do you think that might be? And I'll have students, just dialogue about that in class. But then I'll have them pause after they've had a chance to think about some of their own ideas. And I'll say, okay, which part of the textbook can you find more information on careers? Now I have them go to that section. So even though we're not on that section yet, I have them bounce around so they can see that the textbook is a resource. And when they bounce over to the career section, they're going to discover that sometimes when you explore options, you become more confused before you kind of clarify what pathway you want to travel. So you'll see that they can kind of pull some of that theory and research into their dialogue. So we'll be diving into that content a little bit. So you can see that there's a variety of ways of using the research, but I like to use it as a way to kind of set the stage. I want them to know that critical thinking is not something we're going to talk about on week 3 or week 4. We're going to talk about it throughout the entire semester, and that the research articles are kind of a vehicle to really enhance their critical thinking skills. So I'll ask them questions about, well, who participated and why does that matter? Do you think those results are generalizable to other folks? Would they have any meaning to you? Why or why not? Why do you think the researcher found that? What other possible explanations are there? So we start to have those, those questions that really promote high-level critical thinking skills. So that's one thing I wanted to mention about Chapter 1. Another area that I like to focus on in the chapter about, it's showtime, really kind of showing off your skills, is the presentation section. So many texts don't dive as deep as I do into the research behind presentations and what really makes visually effective slides. So you can see in this chapter, I have information from Mayer, who has done a lot of experimental research. And basically what Mayer shows us is that there are some key elements that make a slide really effective. Less is more. So basically a slide that has a big image and maybe just a couple of words is going to be best. I show them about how, what Mayer calls the redundancy principle, what I call the shut up principle. You can't have a slide with a lot of text on it and then talk over it, because that's not going to be productive. Your students will be like trying to figure out, should I listen, should I read, I'm not sure what to do, and probably walk away with next to nothing. And so they understand all that, but really they need to engage in creating their own PowerPoint slides. So as one of my assignments, they have to work together in a group, and in that group they need to create a PowerPoint presentation on a research article. So I have all students do that independently first. So every student in the group would create their own PowerPoint. And sometimes they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense if we're working together. But it makes an enormous amount of sense, because it's supposed to be that every student is benefiting from the group, and it shouldn't be that one person's carrying the group and that you're doing less work because you're in group. So the idea is that we want to make sure that you can kind of use those skills and put them into practice. So I'll have them assess each other's PowerPoint, and when they assess each other's PowerPoint, they will do so using Mayer's multimedia principles. Did you practice less is more? Did you use an image that made sense? Did you avoid bells and whistles and really focus in on what was most important? So that's another strategy for that chapter. And then the last teaching tip that I'll give you has to do with Chapter 6. I like to emphasize attribution theory when I'm asking students to engage in self-reflection. So I like to provide a lot of reflective exercises attached to big assignments. So if they're taking an exam, they're doing a project, I want them to reflect on that. So I can have them do that sometimes before they hand the project in, but then I also have them do it afterwards, especially if it's a presentation or something. for them to talk about what worked and what didn't. And the way that I bring attribution theory into it is I ask them to make sure that they're focusing on internal changeable factors. So I want them to identify, maybe at least 2 or even 3 things that they did that contributed either to their success, or maybe things that they didn't do that they should have done that would have really led to a better performance. So that it's really helping them see that their actions are what leads to the ultimate outcome. So I hope that those strategies are helpful, and I'm certainly available if anyone has any questions. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to chat with you further. So great, good luck teaching the course. I hope it all goes well, and please don't hesitate to reach out so I can hear how it goes. Thanks so much.